Welcome to Stories with Liz, and happy Christmas Eve if you're seeing this today. Today we are doing The Little Girl's Christmas by Winnefred E. Lincoln. Happy holidays. It was Christmas Eve, and the little girl had just hung up her stockings by the fireplace, right where it should be, all ready for Santa when he slipped down the chimney. She knew he was coming. Because it was Christmas Eve, and because he always had come to leave gifts for her on all other Christmas Eves that she could remember, and because she had seen his picture everywhere in town that afternoon when she was out with her mother. Still, she wasn't quite satisfied. Way down in her heart, she was a little uncertain. You see, when you've never really and truly seen a person with your very own eyes, it's hard to feel as if you exactly believed in him, even though that person always have left beautiful gifts for you every time he has come. "Oh, he'll come," said the little girl. "I just know he will be here before morning. But somehow I wish." "Well, what do you wish?" said a tiny voice close by her, so close that the little girl fairly jumped when she heard it. "Why, I wish I could see Santa myself. I just love to go and see his house and his workshop, and ride in his sleigh and meet Mrs. Santa. It would be such fun, and then I'd know for sure." "Well, why don't you go then?" said the tiny voice. "It's easy enough. Just try on these shoes and take this light in your hand, and you'll find your way all right." So the little girl looked down on the hearth, and there were two cunning little shoes side by side, and a little spark of a light close to them, just as if they were all made of one of the glowing coals of the fire. Such cunning shoes they were. The little girl could hardly wait to pull off her slippers and try them on. They looked as if they were too small, but they weren't. They fitted exactly right. And just as the little girl had put them both on and had taken the light in her hand, along came a little breath of wind, and away she went up the chimney, along with ever so many other little sparks, past the soot fairies and out into the open air, where Jack Frost and the starbeams were all busy at work, making the world look pretty for Christmas. Away went the little girl, two shoes, bright light and all, higher and higher, until she looked like a wee bit of a star up in the sky. It was the funniest thing, but she seemed to know the way perfectly, and didn't have to stop to make inquiries anywhere. You see, it was a straight road all the way, and when one doesn't have to think about turning to the right or the left, it makes things quite easier. Pretty soon the little girl noticed that there was a bright light all around her. Oh, a very bright light, and right away something down in her heart began to make her feel very happy indeed. She didn't know that the Christmas spirits and little Christmas fairies were all around her and even right inside her, because she couldn't see a single one of them, even though her eyes were very bright and could usually see a great deal. But that was just it. And the little girl felt as if she wanted to laugh and sing and be glad. It made her remember the sick boy who lived next door, and she said to herself that she would carry him one of her prettiest picture books in the morning, so that he could have something to make him happy all day. By and by, when the bright light all around her had grown very, very much brighter, the little girl saw a path right in front of her, all straight and trim, leading up to a big hill with a big house with ever and ever so many windows in it. When she had gone just a bit nearer, she saw candles in every window, red and green and yellow ones, and every one burning brightly, so that the little girl knew right away that these were Christmas candles to light her on her journey and make the way clear for her. And something told her that this was Santa's house, and that pretty soon she would perhaps see Santa himself. Just as she neared the steps, and before she could possibly have had time to ring the bell, the door opened of itself, as wide as could be, and there stood Not Santa himself, don't think it, but a funny little man with slender little legs and a roly-poly stomach, which shook every now and then when he laughed. You would have known right away, just as the little girl knew, that he was a very happy little man, and you would have guessed right away, too, that the reason he was so roly-poly was because he laughed and chuckled and smiled all the time, for it is only sour, cross folk who are thin and skimpy. Quick as a wink, he pulled off his little peaked red hat, smiled the broadest kind of smile, and said, "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, come in, come in." So in went the little girl, holding fast to the little man's hand, and when she was really inside, there was the jolliest, reddest fire, all glowing and snapping, and there was the little man and all his brothers and sisters, who said their names were Merry Christmas and Good Cheer, and ever so many other jolly-sounding things, and there were such a lot of them that the little girl just knew that she could never count them, no matter how long she tried. All round her were bundles and boxes and piles of toys and games, and the little girl knew that these were all ready and waiting to be loaded into Santa's big sleigh for his reindeer to whirl them away over cloud tops and snowdrifts to the little people down below who had left their stockings all ready for him. Pretty soon all the little Good Cheer brothers began to hurry and bustle and carry out the bundles as fast as they could to the steps, where the little girl could hear the jingling bells and the stamping of hoofs. So the little girl picked up some bundles and skipped along too, for she wanted to help a bit herself. It is no fun whatever at Christmas, unless you can help, you know. And there in the yard stood the biggest sleigh that the little girl had ever seen, and the reindeer were all stamping and prancing and jingling the bells in their harness, because they were so eager to get on their way back to Earth once more. She could hardly wait for Santa to come. And just as she had begun to wonder where he was, the door opened again and out came a whole forest of Christmas trees. At least it looked just as if a whole forest had started out for a walk somewhere. But a second glance showed the little girl that there were thousands of Christmas sprites, and that each one carried a tree or a big Christmas wreath on his back. Behind them all, she could hear someone laughing loudly and talking in a big jovial voice that sounded as if he were good friends with the whole world. Straight away, she knew that it was Santa himself coming. The little girl's heart went pit-a-pat for a minute while she wondered if Santa would notice her, but she did not have to wonder long, for he spied her at once and said, "Bless my soul, who's this? And where did you come from?" The little girl thought perhaps she might be afraid to answer him, but she wasn't afraid one bit. You see, he had such a kind little twinkle in his eyes that she felt happy right away as she replied, "Oh, I'm a little girl, and I wanted so much to see Santa that I just came, and here I am." "Ho, ho, 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 ho," laughed Santa, "and here you are. Wanted to see Santa, did you? And so you came. Now that's very nice, and it's too bad I'm in such a hurry, for we should like nothing better than to show you about and give you a really good time. But you see, it's 11:45 now, and I must be on my way at once, else I'll never reach the first chimney top by midnight. I'd call Mrs. Santa and ask her to get you some supper, but she is busy finishing doll clothes, which must be done before morning, and I guess we'd better not bother her. Is there anything you would like, my dear?" And good old Santa put his big warm hand on the little girl's curls, and she felt its warmth and kindness clear down to her very heart. You see, even though Santa was in such a great hurry, he wasn't too busy to stop and make someone happy for a minute, even if it was no one bigger than a little girl. So she smiled back into Santa's face and said, "Oh, Santa, if only I could ride down to Earth with you behind those splendid reindeer. I'd love to go. Won't you please take me?" I'm so small that I won't take up much room on the seat, and I'll keep very still and not bother one bit." Then Santa laughed, such a laugh, and big and loud and rollicking, and he said, "Wants a ride, does she? Well, well, shall we take her, little elves? Shall we take her, little fairies? Shall we take her, good old reindeer?" And all the elves hopped and skipped and brought the little girl a sprig of holly, and all the little fairies bowed and smiled and brought her a bit of mistletoe, and all the good reindeer jingled their bells loudly, which meant, "Oh yes, let's take her. She's a good little girl. Let her ride." And before the little girl could even think, she found herself all tucked up in the big fur robes beside Santa, and away they went, right out into the air, over the clouds, through the Milky Way, and right under the very handle of the Big Dipper, on towards the earth, whose lights the little girl began to see twinkling down below her. Presently she felt the runners scrape upon something, and she knew they must be on someone's roof, and that Santa would slip down someone's chimney in a minute. How she wanted to go, too. You see, if you had never been down a chimney and seen Santa fill the stockings, you would want to go just as much as the little girl did. Now, wouldn't you? So, just as the little girl was wishing as hard as ever she could wish, she heard a tiny voice say, "Hold tight to his arm, hold tight to his arm." So she held Santa's arm tight and close, and he shouldered his pack, never thinking that it was heavier than usual. And with a bound and a slide, there they were, Santa, the little girl, pack and all, right in the middle of the room where there was a fireplace and stockings all hung up for Santa to fill. Just then Santa noticed the little girl. He had forgotten all about her for a minute, and he was very much surprised to find that she had come too. "Bless my soul," he said, "where did you come from? And how in the world can we both get back up that chimney again? It's easy enough to slide down, but it's quite another matter to climb up again." And Santa looked really worried, but the little girl was beginning to feel very tired by this time, for she had had a very exciting evening, so she said, "Oh, never mind me, Santa. I have had such a good time, and I'd just as soon stay here a while as not. I believe I'll curl up on this hearth rug for a few minutes and have a little nap, for it looks as warm and cozy as our own hearth rug at home, and why, it is our own hearth, and it is my nursery, for there is my teddy bear in his chair where I leave him every night, and there's Bunny Cat curled up on his cushion in the corner." And the little girl turned to thank Santa and say goodbye to him, but either he had gone out very quickly, or else she had fallen asleep very quickly. She never could tell which. For the next thing she knew, Daddy was holding her in his arms and was saying, "What is my little girl doing here? She must go to bed, for it's Christmas Eve, and old Santa won't come if he thinks there are any little folks about." But the little girl knew better than that, and when she began to tell him all about it, and how the Christmas fairies had welcomed her, and how Santa had given her such a fine ride, her daddy laughed and said, "You've been dreaming, my darling, you've been dreaming." But the little girl knew better than that, too, for there on the hearth was the little black coal which had given her shoes and bright light, and tight in her hands she held a holly berry, which one of the Christmas spirits had placed there. More than all that, there she was on the hearthrug herself, just as Santa had left her, and that was the best proof of all. The trouble was, her daddy himself had never been a little girl, so he couldn't know anything about it. But we know she hadn't been dreaming, don't we, my dears? The end. Hope you're all having happy holidays. See you next year. Bye for now.